Okay, we're back. We got kicked
Yeah,
out.
here we go. Okay.
Sorry about that. Okay.
You're right. It's not as bad as I thought.
No.
It just took so long to read.
Yeah, you just really need to go to where it's highlighted.
Sorry about that. That's all right.
It happens. Don't worry about it.
I'm just glad I'm not in your shoes because it would never work.
Okay, so, all right, we're back again. Okay, I'll turn this over to Allison and we can go through the different ordinances with everybody. And then once we've approved them, as I understand it, it goes from here to the town council. Is that correct?
Yes, these will be referred, these are zoning ordinance amendments. They'll be referred to the town council for them to host the public hearing and adopt them. So
Okay.
we have Ashley Sweet here from Weston and Sampson who prepared the draft amendments. And so I'm gonna have her walk through, just give you, kind of list out the different sections, just kind of a very brief explanation for each one. And then we can go through one at a time to see if planning board members have any questions or recommended changes.
Okay. All right, which one are you going to start with?
It's if you have a particular order you'd like to go in, I can do it that way, or I was just gonna grab them as I had them and go
Well, we
from
have
there.
them the way they were printed out by Amanda. And the first one she has here is the appendix on zoning. Permitted uses. I don't know whether it's where.
That must be,
Yeah,
So that would be
adaptive reuse.
adaptive reuse.
Adaptive reuse, okay.
Yep, let me just grab that one. I have everything open. I just want to grab it. So in this one, we've
This is adaptive reuse right here.
we've taken the first set, up front in your zoning ordinance under Article 1 General. We've added a section that relates to permitted uses. The first paragraph and A, B, and C of that draft are all directly from state law. And then we've added D, which is the way the state law has done it as well, is that's where adaptive reuse has been added to the law. So in that section, we have added the provisions for adaptive reuse in terms of eligibility, the density, the two different ways to calculate the density of an adaptive reuse project, what the dimensional requirements or how you're supposed to deal with the dimensional requirements of an adaptive reuse project, the parking requirements from the state law. We've added some language here that speaks to allowed uses within the project, which basically says that residential units are permitted regardless of the zoning district, but that anything that's proposed that's non-residential has to comply with the district in which the adaptive reuse project is located. And then we've called out development and design standards from the land development and subdivision regulations, and then explained the procedural requirements for an adaptive reuse project. So I don't know if there are any specific questions with this one.
I have a question, just
Okay.
for information's sake. Number 3, dimensional requirements. Since this is going to rule Block Island, who will the permitting authority be?
So it will really depend on the specifics of the project. If the project is less than 7,500 square feet, it would be a minor land development. And it would be the permitting authority would be the administrative officer. There's also the possibility to designate development plan review for an adaptive reuse project, and there are two types of development plan review, administrative and formal. So this is something that the administrative officer has the ability to assign the type of review process and can make a determination based on complexity, size.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, any other questions or comments? Okay. Now, do we have to vote on each one of these separately to send forward to the town council, or can we vote on them at the end, or in other words, what's the best way to do it?
You can do it either way. I think in this case, I would go one by one, just in case there's one or more.
Okay,
that don't make it.
fine.
Want to get as much to the council as possible.
And so I just wanted to mention, I know, Karen and Allison and I spoke earlier today, and Karen has some edits from her perspective, legal edits from her perspective. We discussed the fact that, I've looked at her edits, Allison has looked at them. They're more organizational and wording related as opposed to, I would say, anything that would change the intent or the way that these would be applied. So we want to make sure that, we can make those minor adjustments and still have the board comfortable with sending these forward.
Amanda has printed these out at 3:00 today, so we have them in front of us.
Great. Okay.
Okay, so any other comments on the adaptive reuse?
No.
I
If
do have
not,
a
I'll make-
question on the, sorry, so
Go
at
ahead.
the bottom though, at 8 specific and objective provisions, how, like, I had sent questions on that. What are we putting within there? Ashley, like,
So the reason that, we've kind of left that blank, it's really a policy call for the municipality to determine what the specific provisions would be.
so that needs to be completed and that should be, that's going to reside within the zoning versus the regs, like, is that something that,
Yeah, so we don't
Must
have
live-
we don't
yeah.
have a section within the subdivision regulations where we would specifically address adaptive reuse. This is the entirety of it. So if we're gonna list those provisions, we need to do it here.
and those are similar to like what the special use permit criteria we've been developing? Or because these are not going to be special use permit projects and potentially are reviewed administratively, so,
Right.
I'm just kind of looking for guidance on that as far as what.
Yeah, I mean, the best I can tell you is that this is kind of uncharted territory for everybody. They didn't give any guidance in the law. They just said that, you have to have these specific and objective provisions for adaptive reuse, although they are permitted uses. So it's
Yeah.
a bit of a quandary there, a conundrum of like, how are you supposed to have these specific and objective provisions? This is a permitted use. This is not the same circumstance as a special use permit because those are conditionally permitted and then you create those conditions. These are just permitted uses. I don't know that I can speak to what the intent was there. I think we have to try our best.
Ashley, do you have any suggestions that you've seen as far as criteria, specific and objective provisions from other towns?
So I'll tell you that the last couple times we have gone through this, we've had this exact same conversation, and the agreement in every circumstance was the law says it, but we have things already in our zoning ordinance that speaks to a lot of this stuff. Plus, we're already being told what the parking requirements are. It's a permitted use, it's an existing building, and they've just deleted this section. And they've left it.
They're choosing not to include specific criteria there at the bottom, but
Yep.
could we specifically reference maybe our, like, for example, in the regulations in regards to landscaping and exterior lighting that already exists, like, would we
So
just?
we do
reference it?
that up above in the development and design standards section in number 6. We do say that site design has to be in accordance with the land development and subdivision regulations,
Yeah.
which I do think
would
is a
cover,
is a
yeah.
specific provision. And that's kind of the conversation we've had, is that there are things that exist in the zoning ordinance. There are things in this particular ordinance itself that are specific. And we call out the land development and subdivision regulations for design. And the general consensus so far has been that qualifies. It's good enough.
Okay,
So we would strike 8 specific and objective provisions and rely on.
If
what's
everyone is
existing.
comfortable
Otherwise, it
with,
become redundant potentially, unless
Yeah.
there's something that's
yeah, I
not.
mean, it either becomes redundant, or you've gotta come up with something outside of what we've already covered, through, the parking and the design standards. And I'm not sure what those provisions would be.
I'm for going ahead and just scratching it.
Me too.
What's your hesitation, Allison?
No, well, there's a note there about adding specific, provisions and criteria, so I just wanted
Well,
to see what.
I think it's okay to do that legally. I just want to make sure that if there are other standards that the board would want to include in this section, that there's an opportunity to do that. Not saying you have to do that now. You could do that later in a cleanup change. But to Ashley's point, to the extent that this ordinance does have specific and objective criteria in it now, I think you are able to rely on that, especially with the reference to the subdivision regs.
All right, so we can make that change.
All right, then I'll make a motion that we approve all the changes to the adaptive reuse. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. And as long as we can add something later, if Allison feels it's necessary, I think we can go forward with this.
Okay.
Okay, the second one that I have on my list here is the modifications for zoning ordinance.
Okay.
All right, just give me 1 second so I can grab that one
Yeah.
also.
I'm just using it in the same order that they got printed out this afternoon so that we have it here.
What article is that, Margie?
Okay, Article 7, permits, procedures, and enforcement.
Thank you.
So what we
705, modification permits.
The names are in the top left corner.
The top left corner, it says new zor. Modification zoning ordinance. There'll be a title for each one of those that I'm reading. But then there are the upper, that's a good point, upper left-hand corner. Thank you.
Do you?
So on this one, we took your existing section 705 for modifications, and we made changes to it to ensure that it was consistent with the new requirements. And we've really just removed and modified language to make sure that it is consistent. So I don't know if there are any specific questions there.
I have one question. How
Okay.
how does this affect non-conforming land use?
So that's a good question, because there's also a provision in the law that addresses non-conforming lots, and it's essentially says that any non-conforming lot gets an automatic reduction of its dimensional requirements based on a proportional
Okay.
percentage. So for whatever percent you are in non-conformance in size, if you're 50% non-conforming, all
Right.
of your setbacks are proportionally reduced 50%. I think I think there's a question here if you can get that proportional reduction and then get a modification on top of that. And I don't think there's anything that prohibits that.
Oh,
So the language that has been drafted to address that issue is at B4.
Yes.
Yes.
Are there any other questions on either page 2 or page 3?
No, not for me.
I just have one question, Ashley.
Yep.
In the
Good.
beginning at B1, I know that, and I might just be missing it, but I know that, modifications 15% or less shall be permitted, but anything above the 25%. So are you just, that B1 language, are you just assuming that anything? I guess I'm just not seeing any clear language that talks about what happens if it's 15% or less.
So we didn't change, that's existing language. So the New Shoreham was allowing up to 25% already. And we didn't touch that. So the law used to be that you could do it if you wanted to do it, but now you have to do it. And you have to do it to 15%, but you can go up to 25 if you want to.
I see. Okay, so you're saying currently they're already up to 25.
Yes. So we left that alone.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else got questions? Going once? Okay, if not, I will make a motion to approve the changes made to the modification for the zoning ordinance. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any further questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, the next one on my list is the New Shoreham TRC zoning. TRC is the Technical Review Committee.
Okay.
All right.
So in this one, we've added a section to your Article 6 administration for the Technical Review Committee. And in here, we're establishing the Technical Review Committee, establishing its membership, stating that the planning board has to adopt written procedures for the Technical Review Committee, and that you have to keep a permanent record essentially of the TRC's recommendations.
So I have a question.
Okay.
I could envision that maybe one of those people is unable to be on that commission, and I was going to suggest that we have a more flexible option, such as 5 people will represent, or people will represent 5 of the 12 names, categories listed here, so that we have flexibility.
I think they were doing that already. It says a minimum of 3 members. So you could operate with just 3 if you need to, is how I read that.
I don't think it's wise to lock ourselves into specific categories. It depends on the subject that's being studied. Different specialists would be useful depending upon what it is we're debating. And now we're locked in.
So the way that this is structured, and I'm not sure if this helps or not, but the way this is structured is that the council, by passing this, if they were to pass this, would say that the planning board now has the ability to put out some regulations about a TRC, regarding a TRC. There has to be within those regulations, there has to be a minimum of 3 members. And then you've got your B section, which kind of outlines all of the different areas in which those individuals could come from. You see several highlights towards the end of that section. And those are questions for you if you want to include or not include those people. And then in it, so you have a minimum of 3. So once the council, if they were to pass this, it would then come back to the board with the help of Weston Sampson to draft subdivision regulations. At that point, the board would take this matter up and say, okay, what do we want the TRC to look like? So long as we're complying with this ordinance, it has to be a minimum of 3. It could be more. It's got to come from this list. Okay, fine. And also there's language on the second page at C1, which was added to give you some flexibility. So if additional members need to sit for a specific project, you would be able to do that as well. But again, that will then come back to the board and you will promulgate that in your subdivision regulations.
That's beautiful. I misinterpreted the highlighting, the purpose of the highlighting then.
Oh,
Okay. Anyone else got questions?
No.
All right. I will make a motion.
Just before we move on that, is the board, I assume by maybe this, is there any discussion about those highlighted items? From 7 to 11? That's the only real big question. Just want to make sure that you're okay with those particular individuals.
Yeah, we had talked
Yeah.
about that last time, and I think
Oh.
the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the changes and additions to the technical review committee for the under zoning.
Second,
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
I,
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Oops. Okay, next one on my list is the New Shoreham Development Plan Review for Zoning.
okay,
This is Article 7, Permits, Procedures, and Enforcement.
gotcha.
Okay,
So in this one, we've taken your existing development plan review section and we've really just distilled it down into essentially establishing development plan review as a process, identifying that the permitting authority is determined by the land development and subdivision regulations. And you'll see that a lot has been struck here and
yes.
we're going to take anything that's related to process or requirements or standards is going to move into the subdivision regulations.
Oh,
So you're not losing it. It's just going over to where the actual process gets described in terms of what the steps of review are, who the permitting authority are, and then what the standards are will all be in your subdivision regulations.
okay.
And
Okay.
those drafts are already underway, correct, Ashley? And the planning board
Correct.
will have those like very soon for February, yeah.
So
Okay.
we're working to get the accompanying subdivision regulation documents to you as quickly as we can so that that we reduce the gap in time essentially between taking language out and landing it into the subdivision regulations.
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to time it, where the town council has their public hearing and the planning board's adopting the subdivision reg amendments within, in close proximity.
Okay,
and I
any
just
other
want to,
questions or comments here?
I want
No,
to add to that,
Okay.
you probably need to give some thought, at this point, who you want the permitting authority to be. You've got a couple of options and there's a couple of paths, which I'm sure Ashley can explain. If that's something that you're able to do now, I think you should do that, and I think you should add that to subsection B.
so what are our options?
So for development plan review, you can authorize either the administrative officer, the technical review committee, or the planning board for formal development plan review. For administrative development plan review, the permitting authority is the administrative officer.
Mhm.
I think I would like to see the entire board do the development plan review.
I agree.
Agreed.
Okay,
So Karen, would we just amend B to just state the permitting authority for administrative is the administrative officer and the permitting authority for formal applications is the planning board?
Correct.
Okay.
yes, yes. Anything else we should look at before we vote? Okay, then I will make a motion that we approve the changes and additions to the development plan review for zoning.
Second,
Okay, any further comments? All those in favor say aye.
I,
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right. The next one on my list here is special use permits. It's Article 4, criteria for special use permits.
So you've seen this one before. We brought this back with the
Yeah.
amendments that you had requested.
right,
So we're using your existing section 401 to create the criteria for special use permits. And then in section D, we break out each of the special use permits and then list those specific and objective criteria for each of those different types.
Okay. Is there anything in particular we ought to be aware of here?
I didn't find anything.
I
Yes.
didn't find, yeah, good, what? Because I didn't find
Oh.
anything.
The biggest change here, like we talked about during the last item on your agenda, was that all criteria have to be specific and objective.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I need you to take a look at the highlighted terms throughout. Those are just things that jumped out at me as potentially not that specific. If there's an opportunity to interpret them differently, that's fine. If there's a way that you think that you want to change the language to make it more specific, I would encourage that. And that's just something to keep in mind going forward with all your special use permits.
So we should take this
So what do
again.
you want us to change anything now?
Yeah, I mean, I would take a look at, for example, you've got an A1. You've got existing language that says other proposed structures shall be related harmoniously to the terrain. So the term related harmoniously, in my opinion, is not specific or objective.
Where is that?
Karen, these are general criteria? Well, they're not. The
They're
word general is being
titled general.
stricken, but
Mhm.
does it matter that these apply to all versus like a specific use? So like, is it okay to be more broad here? Because when you're looking at the specific use that needs a special use permit, there are specific and objective criterias for every use there.
I hear what you're saying, and I went back and forth with that as well. The trouble that I think you run into is that how do you deal with a special use permit denial that was denied not based on the specific use criteria, but it's denied under the general, the title, the criteria for special use permits. The law is pretty clear that it's got to be specific and objective. I think you're going to run into issues if you are denying based on a general non-specific criteria. I think someone's going to appeal that and they're going to go to court and they're going to say, listen, the state law says it's got to be specific and objective. This criteria wasn't. I don't know how you would separate those two.
Do you think that there's a way, because I'm finding the same trouble elsewhere, is that municipalities have these kind of general lists and they don't want to let go of them. And
No, we don't.
understandably so, they don't want to just delete this language from their zoning ordinance. I'm wondering if we could change the introductory paragraphs maybe a little bit so that it's, you know, they're not criteria for approval, where maybe they're just, I don't know what we would call it, but maybe we could get a little bit creative so that they don't have to necessarily just, you know, get rid of these in totality. But maybe they could be titled a little bit differently. You know, I don't know what the terminology would be, guiding principles. I don't know, something kind of a much higher level, so
Mhm.
that then you move down to the next level where the criteria for approval are.
Yeah, I think that might work. I think you'd have to
That's a good
strike,
idea.
you'd have to
Okay.
strike criteria.
Because we really do not want to give these up. I mean, we all know
Right.
related harmoniously. We've worked years to
Right.
get that kind of thing into the language,
Mm-hmm.
and we'd be extremely reluctant to let it go.
Yeah, and I don't think
Yeah.
you should let it go. I think Ashley's idea is definitely more efficient. The other option would be to go through these and just, you know, try to tweak the language, which could be tedious. If you're comfortable with it, I would
Well-
recommend striking at subsection A where it starts criteria for approval. You could strike that. And then you could strike the following words: no special use permit shall be issued unless the zoning board of review finds that each of the following standards have been approval has been met. I
So,
would actually
Karen,
strike that
let me-
whole paragraph And just,
Yeah,
and just redefine it as, something else.
Okay, Allison, did you get all that?
Well, I'm just a little concerned with that as far as then they'd have no, there's no, they hold no weight. Like, what is their purpose then if they can't be used to approve or deny an application? You know, if it's not used as a review, then
Absolutely. We could always go back once we've had a little bit more time to look at these terms and either make them specific and objective or, you know, redefine what they are. That might be an option if the board wants to go that way.
I'm curious why this is a question for the board. Have you looked at all these? I mean, like, I even have questions on the board. I'm like, what is harmoniously?
Right.
I mean, it is absolutely objective. Right?
It's
Your
subject.
harmonious is dead, not my harmonious.
Mhm.
It's subjective.
Subjective, sorry.
The other one.
The other one. And visually and dimensionally compatible. Like, I mean, I get the conundrum that our attorney pointed out that we can get ourselves into, and I don't know.
Yeah, I understand that, but I don't want to give this up either. I want to
Oh,
have
I
some
know.
way to
I
make it work.
I understand that, Margie,
Yeah.
but what are you giving up?
You're giving up true.
Your ability to have an objective,
Definition.
no, we're giving up our ability to say, I don't like that.
Right, our general and sort of broad things. we're
But from a
giving up.
legal perspective, we need the teeth behind, I don't like, to be specific.
I think we
as
need-
to what,
Right, I think
right?
what we're struggling with is we need both.
Right, so I don't know,
So
but
what does
I,
that look like?
I'm asking if any, like, some of these I think can be changed, not all. of them.
Yeah.
Some of them can be.
Yeah.
But I certainly wouldn't use harmoniously. I would try to find something else that was,
that's
you know,
Maybe,
Compatible with the neighborhood.
maybe it would help if one of you resubmitted this to us and highlighted the ambiguous language in blue
she
or
did.
pink.
It is.
It is highlighted.
It's
It's in
yellow.
yellow.
It's yellow.
Would you
Oh,
like,
wait a
that?
minute.
It's already done.
It's in- Well, then
Maybe I'm
you,
looking at the wrong one.
yeah, you want to use the copy that was given to you today, not the one that you got.
Oh,
week ago.
Never mind.
So it's
You know, so what is significant negative impacts? Like, why can't you just assign an actual quantitative measurement for that on number 5?
I haven't seen this yet. We just got this one.
yeah, that's why I say, I try to get everybody to use this.
Sorry, sleeping.
Well,
I mean, this one's gotta be tough because I see both sides of it
yeah.
and I.
And I
also
don't
see-
think we have time enough to do this tonight. This takes a little more time. My suggestion, I think going back to what, I think it was Allison that said, that we could go ahead and pass this and bring it back at a later date to define these more specifically and let, Karen give us legal terms.
Can't we just table it?
I hesitate to table it because I think that we
Oh.
need to have the criteria for the special use permits on the books so that we don't have to fall back for what the state says.
Yeah, so just so you understand
Okay.
the process, the special use permits, if you don't have specific and objective criteria in place, the use is allowed by right.
And we don't want to do that.
You don't want to do that. And I just want to point out one thing, so don't forget, at number 7, and this is a question, I think, for Ashley. Ashley, there's a language in number 7 that talks about consistency with the comp plan.
Yep.
Refresh my memory. Isn't there something in the law that says you can no longer deny
Right.
based on consistency?
You
That's what
can't
I
have
heard.
that as a specific and objective criteria. So if we're changing these to something else, you could leave it. If we're going to convert these to specific and objective criteria that apply across the board, then we would have to delete it.
Okay.
Ouch. It just feels so exposed. It just feels so.
Hmm.
Could we leave it in, the comprehensive plan, but refer to, for each specific case that comes to us, refer to the page in the comp plan that we are talking about?
No.
Which would be specific.
No, so the reason behind it,
I
the
love
premise-
lawyers. I hate lawyers, but I love lawyers.
The premise
That
is that
complex.
there's an assumption that if you've designated it as a special use permit use, that is a conditionally permitted use, and therefore you've already found it to be consistent with your comprehensive plan. If you don't think it's consistent with your comprehensive plan, then you would have made it a prohibited use.
Okay,
Oh,
all right. I can see that argument. Yeah, I can see that argument.
So
may not
I
like
think
it, but I can see it.
we could leave it in for now, because I think the plan is that we're gonna adopt this and we're gonna come up with some other heading or title for this section. So they're not the specific and objective criteria. And if the desire is to bring these back as specific and objective criteria that can be used to determine a decision, then we need to tweak that language to make them more specific. And then at that point, we would delete number 7.
Okay.
Okay.
So I will make a motion to keep this for now, with the understanding that we will change the title on that paragraph. And then if we have to come back and rewrite this again later, I mean, it's a living document. Yes, we can do that. So I will make a motion to approve the special use permits as
Hold
written.
on, hold on, before we do that, I have additional,
Oh, okay, I'm too soon is what you're telling me. Go ahead.
so I just have a question, on subsection D. Everything's gotta be in conformance with the comp plan. Actually, is that something that your office has taken up?
I mean, I will say that we haven't specifically gone through your whole comprehensive plan to tie these in somehow, but I think it would be difficult to say that anything in here would be in conflict, because the comprehensive plan is pretty high level and more broad and speaks to protecting, the town's resources, protecting neighborhoods, protecting, economic development. And really what we've tried to do here is just implement specific and objective criteria that essentially give the board the ability to do that in their decision making. So I think, like I said, we have not done a 1-for-1, comparison, but I'm confident to say that the specific and objective criteria here would not violate the comprehensive plan in any way.
Okay, so for and I get it, because as you know, a comprehensive plan analysis on all of these would take a substantial amount of time. So I
Yes.
think then the thought that I have on that is, going forward, if we do come across an issue where one is not consistent with the comp plan, we would have to deal with it then, understanding that the state law says that these criteria have to be consistent. You might have to deal with that on an application by application basis.
Yep.
Okay. And then the other thing is, below D, you have all of, and this is to the board, you have the general special use permit uses and the specific and objective criteria that have been drafted. There are a few highlights there I want you to be aware of. These are your criteria to approve these uses if they come before you. These are the criteria that you would look at to determine whether or not the project meets the criteria, and if it does, it is entitled to a special use permit. Like we talked about above, they have to be specific and objective. Some of these, you'll see a couple of highlights. I just want to put them before you to make sure that you agree that they are specific and objective, and if they're not, they need to be changed.
Okay, so we're talking now Article 4, is that right?
We are under subsection D1, starting with assembly halls.
Yeah.
So,
So it's just starting at the bottom of page 2.
so you
Okay.
highlighted a word safe, for example. So we
Correct.
could make it say safe as determined by, and then list the agency that would be required to determine that it's safe.
Exactly. You could do it by agency approval. You could do it by submission of a pedestrian circulation plan. But you've got to take out as much subjectivity as possible.
Oh, boy, you need to spend more time.
Can we do that? Since it's
Yeah.
just single words, can we do that right now?
Yes.
All right,
There's so many of them.
well, but they're only single words. For example, you said for safe pedestrian safety plan.
Yeah, so
Pedestrian
exactly. So for 1A, you could say something to the effect of a pedestrian circulation plan has to be submitted, you know, some more of a checkbox item and less of a
Okay, then let's-
determination of what is safe and what's not.
okay. So if we change that to a pedestrian circulation plan. And then a security plan that clearly specifies. And jumping down,
Provide protection.
There should be a designated drop-off area at the entrance.
at the,
Where are you, babe?
3,
commercial.
drop off area near an entrance to the building. I was just trying to think, sometimes you can't get quite to the entrance, but
Designated area,
designated area,
period.
Are you at 3B now?
yeah, 3B.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm with you.
Why
Design,
there should just be a designated drop-off area, period.
Right.
Okay,
That would do it.
That give it.
Okay.
and I think C, you just do whatever you're doing in
Doing
A.
for A, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, going on now to page 3. And again, the same thing, the safe pedestrian, just a security plan that, and again, use lists, outline entrance procedures. Dropping down to
You mean
protection.
on 6C, yeah,
6C, just drop the word clearly.
Mhm.
Yeah, just
just
eliminate
drop
it.
that word.
Yeah,
Mhm.
For stables, if we're on that one, I had just Allison, I was thinking, should we add something about water protection there, that they should be in conformance with the Rhode Island DEM or CRMC? Like stables performance standards, because I know there could be issues with manure management. Specifically as it
think it
relates
says-
to runoff.
I think it says,
Near, it was, so should there be setbacks, which would the Rhode Island DEM would set those standards for setbacks along, say, ponds and aquifers and marshes and harbors, because there isn't that protection right now. On
H,
So-
7H,
yeah.
I know within those standards, we do lists about manure management, and then runoff in a couple of the standards is addressed, but as far as specifically referencing like state buffer requirements for wetlands, is that what
Yeah.
you're speaking
yeah,
to?
you need something that's stronger.
I don't
in
know
there.
what I don't know as far as stables, what that like as far as horses and I don't know if there's
I don't know, but I think-
setback.
Yeah, I think we need it because I've seen it out here where it's a problem where I've had to work with the DEM on figuring out how far away the horse manure should be from a pond. And I think
Okay.
it was DEM that we turned to help this particular client figure that out. I could be
But
wrong.
that's, is that a commercial stable?
No, it wasn't commercial.
That's kind of what this, but if this, under commercials, if it says
Commercial.
that
yeah.
should not be discharged directly into runoff or permitted to flow over the surface of the ground, that handles that. I don't know what agency approves a stable though,
It
but if
does.
it's not permitted under this period, then they'd have to install, I would imagine, some type of commercial system, right?
Yeah, to protect the body of water that this is running off to.
It just says you
So-
can't do it.
it just says runoff, but it doesn't say, you know,
Shall not be
protect
discharged
that.
directly into runoff or permitted to flow over the surface of the ground. Like you're not allowed to, the stable, you're just talking about the field. This is stable in the field are two different things, wouldn't it?
no, I'm talking about both and how can we protect bodies of
Because
water?
H doesn't allow it. I don't even know what a commercial stable would do, honestly. I don't know how it works.
Yeah, I
You
agree.
could look into
I was
what,
just
And the
getting-
chances of our getting a large commercial stable here is not too
Yeah.
great.
we could
I'm
look into
concerned about
state
water
law
But
on
like
that.
what Mary's saying makes
Yeah.
sense, right?
Yeah.
Like, I
But-
get it, but
Ha-
I don't know how you do that on the mainland. Like, how do you keep it from running off?
Can I make a suggestion for this one? So for F, what if you just changed it to the stable shall provide a plan to maintain compliance with all applicable state and local regulations
Perfect.
regarding sanitary conditions?
Fine.
Perfect.
Perfect.
And
Is that for,
To
for
Any
H,
permitting, any
be in
state permitting
conformance with-
requirements.
state and local? So if there's anything out there that they have to comply with regarding runoff, they've got to present a plan at the time of the special use permit application.
Yep,
are you replacing the language in H with that?
No, F F would read, the stable shall strike be held to a high standard. Insert, provide plan to maintain compliance with all applicable state and local regulations regarding strike of. I can send you my notes if that helps.
That would help, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, going back to page 3, we have a few highlighted ones. 6B, required to include safe. Again,
Plan.
plan instead, like we've done before, and I think you could just remove the word clearly.
Right. We don't want.
We don't need it.
something
Moving down to 2A.
7A.
I'm sorry, 7A. Thank you. It said to provide protection from outdoor elements.
What's wrong with the word protection?
I
Guess we have different definitions.
Yeah.
Too broad,
was trying to think of another.
provide.
So you want.
Why is that even in there?
I don't have that. Margie, are you talking about 7A theaters?
7A.
Commercial
stables.
stable.
Commercial stables. I'm on page
For the
3.
horses here.
Wait, mine must have shifted. Oh,
I
yep,
think your numbering changed.
my numbering must have shifted. Okay.
Okay, this was the one that was printed this afternoon.
I'm just, why do you have to specify an indoor facility providing protection? That's why you're building it. So why is that even in there?
That's a good point.
Like, what's the point?
Right. It's indoor facilities shall provide.
So can you just strike the whole?
Why don't you just take that sentence out?
Right.
Right.
I mean, isn't that what an indoor facility does? It provides protection from outdoor elements and weather.
Okay.
Mhm.
I mean, is there a
Wait.
need for that sentence to be there?
Yeah, is there a need for an indoor facility to be written? To be noted?
You could change it to indoor facilities shall be provided to protect.
Okay,
What sentence are you on? There's a couple different versions, so I'm wondering if I've already
okay, I'm on
changed that.
7A.
Line 4, 7A.
7A, I have different language there. Stable facility shall include a roof, a floor, and 4 sides, and shall provide enough space for each animal to sit, stand, lie in a normal manner. Is that,
Next
Yeah.
sentence,
Next one.
indoor facilities towards the bottom.
oh. Okay. A roof, a floor, yeah, so I think it's redundant to me.
I think you can get rid of the sentence.
Yeah.
Fine, take it out.
You better.
Okay, and in good repair, that again is similarly, why would we want something in poor repair? Of course, we want it to be in good repair.
I think you could still take it out and get the same.
You know?
And I liked in this part how there was shade for the horses, but not for the kids. in the school.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Discussion about shade for horses. I was like, oh, there's nothing for kids there.
Okay,
Okay, so
So,
cloth in good repair, firmly secured.
maintained,
Cloth
Good
main,
repair.
is cloth, a well-maintained cloth, firmly secured to a frame or. What I'm thinking they're trying to prevent is one with a lot of holes in it that doesn't really work. So,
is that too general, well maintained?
is that good enough or not?
Is that not specific or is it too
I
general?
think that works.
I like in good repair.
Do you have enough to vote, right?
Mhm.
You have enough to vote.
Yes, you can go play, go play sports. Bye. I think a lot of the red of it, we'll wait till next month anyway, because neither Claire nor Gail are here for number 4. So, all right.
Are you waiting for us or are we waiting for?
Okay, going down now to E, adequate protection.
Offering
I
protection.
think you could just
Yes.
get rid of.
Yeah, just
adequate.
offering protection. I don't know what,
Get rid of adequate.
I don't think you need adequate.
Whether-
And it just is, and enough, just as well as headroom, and I don't think you need to say enough, but headroom for horses to stand. And you don't even need the word comfortable. If they're standing, they're going to be comfortable.
Right,
We're kept clean and dry with, appropriate drainage,
necessary
with necessary drainage or, proper drainage.
as needed.
You could use the old in compliance with state regulations.
State regulations, I love it.
Um,
Okay, all right, going on to, the next page, there are a couple here. On G, the stable shall be held to a high standard of sanitary condition. I could agree, high standard probably does not, everybody has a different standard.
Yeah.
Shall be,
All the others can have a low standard. Sorry, I'm getting slapped.
we've,
Yeah,
So that's
You
the
can-
one where you'll have them provide a plan.
okay, to, shall be held to,
You could say
Uh,
the stable shall be kept in sanitary conditions.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, hold on a
Yes.
second, hold on a second. You've got an issue with that, because that is not something that you'd be able to figure out at the time of a special use permit hearing. That's more of an enforcement issue. I think my recommendation would be for that. is
Plan.
if you want it to be just an enforcement issue, then fine. If you want to evaluate that issue at the time they come before you for a special use permit, I think the stable has got to provide a plan to maintain that compliance.
fine, let's do that. Put a plan in there.
Right, otherwise you're saying something like mandatory inspection every 2 years or something. Okay.
Plan. Okay, I think the theater is okay. Okay, next page, it's 5. Right top of the page, seated with appropriate native plants.
I think you just take out appropriate.
Take out appropriate, you want to use native plants, what's as listed in the Rhode Island, plant list, University of Rhode Island plant list, native plant list.
Native plant land. Rhode Island native plant land.
Eliminate the word significant
Just takes out significant.
and eliminate particularly significant in J.
Construct to ensure. I think
Ensure is probably fine.
I'd leave it assure and just take out,
Just take out
particularly significant, and just say
particularly.
historic.
Yeah.
Because we're just saying historic or cultural,
Right.
that's fine.
Right.
Okay. All right, can we go ahead and improve this now?
Well, I think you can. Give me 1 second, just run through.
Did we do page 1?
And then we're going to come back and do page 1 at a later date. No, actually, what we're gonna do is change the title, rewrite that paragraph and leave this rest of page 1 as is. And then if that doesn't work, we will come back at a later date and rewrite it.
Okay.
So I will make a motion to approve the changes and additions to the special use permit.
Second.
And any further questions or comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. And last but not least, it's the Unified Development Review and the land development projects. So, see what we have to do with that.
Give me 1 second. That one didn't open for me, so let me just
Okay,
grab it again.
so-
While you're doing that, could somebody please tell me what a unified development review is?
Yes, so Unified Development Review is a fun new thing in your world. It is a process by which an application that has to go before the planning board, but also needs some sort of zoning relief, a variance, a special use permit, or both, now gets heard by the planning board altogether. So you would hear both the planning aspect, the permitting on the planning application, and also you would be in charge of granting the zoning relief. The
Really?
idea behind it is so that applicants don't have to hop from planning board to zoning to get their relief and then back to planning board.
So actually, we gained some power for a change.
It's one way of looking at it. That's great.
Wow.
So in this one, we've added a section to your Article 7 permits, procedures, and enforcement. And here we're establishing Unified Development Review, and we will have a section in the zone and in the subdivision regulations that outlines the entire process for Unified Development Review, so that when someone does have an application, there is a clear path outlined as to when the application is submitted, how the decision is made, the public hearing requirements, and all of those components will live in the subdivision regulations. This is just establishing Unified Development Review as a process, as well as land development project.
Okay.
Okay. Allison, are you happy with this? Since this is something that we really haven't done before, so I want to make sure that you're comfortable with this so that we don't miss anything.
Yeah, majority of this is really state language,
Okay,
language, so we did discuss some of those, the on the second page, C. Zoning incentives. Karen, Ashley, and I spoke about that today. So how did we leave that, Karen? What was the recommendation? Those zoning incentives, are we going to keep those there or not list those?
Well, I think it makes sense to list them, with the understanding that those particular zoning incentives, now I'm drawing a blank on we've had so many conversations today, Allison and I have been working so hard, now I'm forgetting. Ashley, remind me, where did we land on this? I think we landed that we wanted to leave the language in.
Yes.
We would further define the zoning incentives, at a later date.
Or within the regs or the ordinance here in this location?
I think you could do it either way. If you wanted to do in the regs, I think you could. This ordinance is just giving the planning board the authorization to allow for the zoning incentives. So if you wanted to do in the regs, I can look at that more closely, but for now, you're okay. Either way, you've got to do it at another time. And this is enough.
And it's optional flexibility, the planning board's discretion, those items there.
Correct.
Okay, just that was something that's not specific to requiring the language, that's something where the town does have some discretion, so.
So
And Ashley, it's been a very long day. Did I miss anything on that?
Nope.
Okay.
I need a little further clarification, please. So if the planning board is confronted with a development review that does not require any kind of zoning, what do you call them again?
Review.
Zoning
Revo-
relief.
where they give exceptions to the rule. What do you call it again? Zoning
Modification,
Relief.
Variance?
relief.
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 Does that development plan still go to zoning?
So
Or
you've
does
got,
it stop?
so you've got a couple of different things going on there. If you have like a major land development or a minor land development. or a
Yeah.
Subdivision. And any of those require zoning relief. The subdivision or land development project would come before you as the planning board. And you would also grant that zoning relief in conjunction with that application.
But my question is, if there is not a request for zoning relief,
It still comes before you as a major or minor land development or a subdivision
but
project.
not, how, does it come in before zoning?
Not if they don't need any zoning relief.
Interesting. Okay.
And you also mentioned development plan review. That's a little bit of a different process,
Yeah,
which we'll get to once we do the subdivision next.
okay. Any other questions?
Not a.
All right, I will make a motion that, again, we approve the changes and additions to the Unified Development Review and the land development projects.
Second.
Okay, any further comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, guys. This is good job done. And I appreciate all the work on that.
You deserve every penny.
Yes.
You
We
have,
will
an- you have an incredible staff. That did a lot.
Thank you. We know that, but it's always nice to have it recognized. We will definitely pass the word along. So thank you for that.
Staff is appreciated.
Very much so. Without this, we would not be getting through all this.
Goodness.
Okay.
Okay.
So
we'll
next
pass
month
those
you'll have some
along.
more stuff for us to look at, I assume. Okay.
Yeah, we'll
Yes.
have the rest of, so tier one, right, the subdivision regulations. I think we have all tier one zoning, right, at this point, Ashley?
I think that covers it. I'm gonna double check
Yeah,
and
there
make
might-
sure, but I think that should cover everything.
There might be some related, like, adaptive reuse. I think I brought this up to Karen, like the definition of adaptive reuse, like within.
Right, so we will
202, the-
we will address definitions. We're just at this point, because we're just trying to focus on where you have some control. We're leaving definitions to kind of circle back on, but we will update all your definitions.
I have
And then-
one more question that's related to my earlier question. In the past, if a client is dissatisfied with a decision coming from zoning after it's gone through planning, they can take it to court.
Mhm.
Does that step now, is that now one step shorter? In other words, can they go from planning straight to court?
Yes.
Yes.
And there's actually a new court in Rhode Island called the Land Use Court.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank
Right.
you.
Good. Take care.
Actually,
Okay.
I will send you those notes probably tomorrow.
Thank
One
you.
more thing, Ashley, the adaptive
Yeah.
reuse, now that, is that going to go within like the Article 3 where we list all the zoning districts, like a permitted use within those zoning
a-
districts?
That's a great question. My office had that debate today. Ashley, what are you seeing on that? 'Cause I know that the definition says that it's a permitted use, but I don't really see it as a use. I see it more as a process. What are you finding?
I kind of agree with that. It's less of a use because it could contain residential,
Right.
commercial, and other components. So it is less of a use and more of a I don't know what. I mean, it's more than a process, but it's not a use either.
Okay,
So that is a good point.
Yeah,
And
my concern is
we're-
making it a use is then you would have, so say you had a mixed use building. You would have mixed use, the use of the building would be mixed use and adaptive reuse, and I just don't know that I've ever seen that happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we haven't been adding it in that way in other zoning ordinances. We've been letting the section that we've drafted and inserted basically take care of take care of adaptive reuse.
And not put it in a use table or text as a defined use.
Yeah,
Okay,
All
I
right.
think that may overcomplicate it. It may make it more confusing and problematic than if you just left it alone in its own section. I do see your point, Allison, but it is this
Yeah.
weird animal that like doesn't
Yeah.
quite fit into either category fully.
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah,
it
that's
is
what I was-
sort of a use, but not really, and it's definitely it's a thing. We don't quite know what it is.
Yeah,
in
you're,
some cases, it may contain uses that aren't permitted in that zoning district, right?
That's
So
true.
Where it's like, it could be, if you have a zoning district that doesn't allow residential, like,
Right.
but this adaptive reuse project is allowing residential, so, but it's not in your permitted uses.
Yeah,
So
and it's,
that's-
I would say it's more of a project than it is a use or a process. It's a type of project
He's
that's
got
going
it
to
on
get
his
viewed that the town is essentially, has to consider and approve
I like
under
that.
the circumstances that we've presented for it in the ordinance.
Okay.
All right.
All right, we'll leave it as that for now, then.
All right.
Yeah.
See you guys next month. Thank you.
Thank you. Take
Thank you,
care.
Ashley.
I'm going to recommend that because neither Gail nor Claire are here, and they did the amendments here, that we roll that over until next month. So what? Our next meeting, which would be February 14th.
I did speak with Gail today and she
Okay.
did pass along her comments to the extent the board wants to hear those. I'm happy to pass.
I mean,
them
we
on.
could go ahead and do it, but neither one of them are here at this point. Or you're here, Keith, but okay.
You've been sitting here for a long time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we wanted an early consideration because it's an important housing.
I'm sorry, I can't hear. Is Keith speaking?
Oh, Keith, can you come?
Keith, can you come to the microphone? So I said, I'm happy to go ahead and go for it. It's just that there's no,
I mean, it didn't seem like a significant matter in controversy
Okay.
by the time Karen and
Fine.
Allison and
then I'm
Jen met.
to change my mind.
And I really worry about the calendar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's fine. Then we'll go ahead and work on this. I'd love to get stuff off the calendar, onto Keith's calendar.
Thank you.
Especially after your 2.5-hour investment tonight.
Harmonious. That's the word.
Okay.
That's your-
Keith, would you like me to go through what's been done up till now?
Yeah, why don't you?
If you don't mind, how does the back of my head look, by the way?
Nice
Great.
sweatshirt.
Okay,
All right, so this draft ordinance has been reviewed by your staff. Jen and Allison and I met and had a very extensive, very productive call. There was a lot of really good feedback, really great insight. Again, your staff knows their stuff. They work hard. And they've seen a lot of things. So that was incredibly helpful. And changes were made to the draft that was presented to you last time. Those changes are all in your packet, what that should have been passed on to you. The only additional things that were brought up as potential items were through Gail today. I spoke with her. She had sent an email and also we had a talk so I could understand those couple of changes. So I don't know if it makes sense to if you want to discuss generally the draft, or I can point out Gail's comments now. Whatever the chair's pleasure.
I think probably the easiest way would be to just let us know what the highlights are, and then Keith can weigh in if there's explanations needed or questions.
Okay.
I
So,
don't think any of us have a problem with this. We just want to make sure that it is basically ready to go to advertising and town council. So go ahead.
as we talked about last time, the idea behind this was a lot of cleanup and also to make the permitting process to obtain a ADU a little more user friendly, and also to a little in certain instances expedited. There were several items in your ordinance that kind of conflicted. There were multiple things called accessory, things like that, that over the years just needed to be tightened up to make it a little clearer and easier to be implemented. I think the biggest change here, which I think Keith can talk about if he wants, is that there is an expedited approval process. I think we probably talked about this before, just to remind you, in certain instances where you present certain items in the application, you can skip a special use permit and go right to a building permit. So I think that's kind of it in a nutshell, unless Keith, do you have anything to add?
No, I think that sums it up. I think the only thing, I guess I would add two things. One is just to reiterate what Karen said, we're very lucky. You know, in a way, I sort of love this model, you know, where we put together a half dozen people who have different expertise, came up with an approach, worked with Karen, did a draft. Karen worked with Allison and Jen, who raised important points. And now you have before you, you know, an important leg of the stool for affordable housing, clarified and easier to access. And you know, that seems like a victory to me.
Absolutely.
So I will just say too, that the version that you have has several comments in the margin. Those comments are intended to explain the changes that have happened since the last time you saw this. And I'm just checking, remind me, Allison, I think there were a couple items that were flagged by staff. So I don't know if you want to just kind of give the board an overview of what the concerns were.
Well, can you let me know which ones, and I can try to remember.
Yeah.
Some of them might have been Jen's.
The first one was, I think, definition 164, secondary dwelling development. I have a note, removal of secondary dwelling development from definitions and down below an ordinance has been flagged by staff and therefore needs further discussion, no change made.
So that's so the proposed amendments include striking secondary dwelling development. That's an entire section of the ordinance that has been not utilized frequently. But there was one recently. So in that case, it's allowing a second dwelling unit, but you need to have the land to support that, where like as much land as what a subdivision would require, but it doesn't require you to subdivide the property. So again, I think there's only been maybe one in 10 years recently, but Jen, I think just raised it as, you know, question that's a decision. It's a policy level decision to not allow that use or type of development anymore, you know, beyond the discussion of an accessory dwelling unit, like cleanup of the accessory dwelling unit ordinance. So I think it wasn't a specific like language question, but more broadly, like, is the community sure they want to not allow that any longer? So
Yep.
I think does that sound right, Karen? It was just kind of a broad question, just to, you know.
I don't know whether this is helpful, but that Allison's point, I think, made me think about this. One of the prevailing philosophical underpinnings, if you will, of this was, how do you make it easier to do an accessory dwelling unit that is designed for what the intended purpose that the community wants accessory dwelling units for, which is for year-round housing for people? You know, not to make it easier and more transparent to have multiple Airbnbs on your property. You know, might as well just say it, you know? So I think a lot of the changes you'll see are where were the potential for that to happen? And I think that might have been one of them, Karen and Allison.
There's some language in there, because again, we utilize this very little, so it was just this one application recently, but there
Yeah.
is in the secondary dwelling development, like the intent or the purpose stated, and it was, I don't have that section in front of me right now, but about providing like year-round housing for island families, I think is kind of the language there. But, I did have some concerns whether or not, it
And-
doesn't have the restrictions like the ADU would in regard to occupancy. So it seemed to be more like potentially, family guests utilizing it.
I happen to think, I mean, this is my own philosophical position, and maybe this is a solution on that particular one. I happen to think that if you're putting in essentially a second house, second kitchen, that the second one should be for year-round rental. Now, if you're doing that via the ADU, if you're doing that via, the secondary dwelling unit development, that's my opinion.
So the question is, do you want to keep secondary dwelling development as an option, a defined use, regulated, as currently existing in the ordinance, or do you want to delete it?
Good question.
Yeah, it's the language here is the secondary dwelling unit is intended to provide additional housing opportunities for New Shoreham families, but that's stated in the purpose, but there's really no, I mean, there's no year-round occupancy, like documentation required and
Allison, where do you see that? I missed that.
the intent of section 403, secondary dwelling development.
Yep.
So like in reviewing an application, how do you determine if it meets that intent? But
I think you do the same requirement for those as you're going to be doing for ADUs, which is they're for year-round rental. That's my opinion.
it is, I do find this section confusing and the overlap there, what's the distinction at some point between the two? But you do have to have a lot more land to have the secondary dwelling development.
But I'm not talking about that. What
Yeah.
I'm saying is
Mhm.
not, at least for me, philosophically, not terribly confusing or overlapping. And that is whether you are going the 513 route or the ADU route, whatever
Yeah.
term we're now using, or the, and this would qualify for the application that you had recently, or the development of a second house on a lot. If it's for year-round rental, I don't think there necessarily needs to be any change in that.
Well,
How do you define the restrictions for occupancy? How do you?
right now it's being stricken entirely, the section.
Uh-huh.
Right.
And I was just saying, I don't mind keeping it in, provided
Yeah.
it's for year-round rental.
There's a restriction on the
Yeah.
occupancy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a decision.
Because who knows, it may
Policy
happen.
decision. Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, all we have to rely on, and I always hate doing this, but we end up doing it because we're so small, is pointing to the last applications we've seen, right?
Mhm.
And that last application was a situation where a family wanted to build a rental unit for another family, if I recall correctly. If I'm thinking about the right application.
But there was a philosophy behind that ordinance, if it is an ordinance. The philosophy was, rather than have somebody subdivide his property or his or her property, because they could, the land has to be enough so that it could have been subdivided and have two separate parcels. It would allow the parcels to remain one, and aesthetically, there we go again, it would move the structures closer together so it would look more
Farm-like.
farm friendly. That was the purpose behind that.
And
that
there's some,
ordinance.
yeah, and you're right, Sasha,
Oh.
and there were quite a bit of restrictions in regard to sizing of the, so in total, there can't be more than 5,500 square feet in living area, and the secondary dwelling can't exceed 2,000 square feet, and there's some design, intentions listed there.
Can we revisit this issue at a later time to to think about it? In other words, don't let it interfere with what is before us right now? Because it's a good, it's a
what's-
good question.
Yeah, so what's before you right now is a draft ordinance that is in need of a planning board recommendation, either positive or negative to the council. So it really depends on what you want to send to the council.
But the planning board has the authority, I'm assuming, to say, we want to restore the secondary dwelling provisions that were deleted and insert a section that requires that any secondary, that, you know, that something that's constructed or permitted under that section is intended, is only permissible if it's for a year-round rental.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, you could reinstate the deleted sections and add that, yes.
That
I'm fine with that.
that would be fine, yes, that
Yes,
would be
I
fine. Yeah. I think that would, I think that solves the
That
problem.
makes sense, Karen? I think that's consistent with what we talked about.
I think so.
Is there anything else that needs to be highlighted on this discussion before we go ahead and make a recommendation?
There are a couple of other items, just one moment,
Okay.
I'll catch up and then you do two here. The other issue that was flagged by staff, was under your Article 3 uses, single-family dwelling unit. I have a note, section 406 specifically states a special use permit shall be required prior to the issuance of a building permit for any single-family dwelling unit. Accessory residential structure or accessory structure proposed within RA or RB zone. So the large house regs only apply in RA and RB zone. So that was a correction we had to make. But Allison, I think this was something that you had explained to me. My note here is that the question becomes, is the preference to expand the large house regulations into other zones, which would mean keeping the language as drafted and amending section 406, your large house regs? Or do you want to just allow the large house ordinance to apply in the RA and RB zones as currently required?
So
Allison,
the
sorry.
amendments, yeah, so I don't think it was the intent of this group, but that, you know, Karen wanted to leave this comment in here just in case, but within the draft language, there was reference within the permitted uses in Article 3 under each of the zoning districts. It spoke to single family development or associated, you know, structures with a single family development. That section 406, which is our large house regs, it's cited within zoning districts that it's not applicable. So right now, your large house regs apply, section 406 applies to only RA and RB zoning districts. So my comment was to strike that language that had been added in within RCM and all the other zoning districts. That language referencing 406 is as being applicable, not be there unless you're planning on changing the large house regulations and where they apply. I think it was unintended that that language was added in there, but Karen just wants the group that drafted it to, and you know, to, before she took that language out and, you know, make sure that that wasn't the intent to expand.
So Allison, you wanted it taken out, right?
It was added in, it's, well.
It was added in.
It's not applicable, like it's right now,
Right.
it's only in RA and RB zones, the large house regs. So by saying that, by putting it under, it doesn't make sense putting it under all those other zoning districts unless you go into those sections of the large house regs and say it applies to RC, RCM, or, you know, mixed use zone.
So it was a drafting error.
I think so.
I agree with Allison, it's
Yeah.
probably a drafting
Yeah.
error,
Yeah,
but I want to make sure before I made any change,
Yeah.
I am just your scribe. I am not, I am not in the seat of making policy decisions.
I think that's fine.
Okay,
Okay.
I think for what you're saying, that's okay.
Yep.
All right,
I
next
didn't think you
problem.
wanted to open those up right now with this. It's enough. I think you're tackling enough sections right now.
I know, it's a big enough, it's a
Yeah.
big enough sandwich.
All right, so I think we had one more from.
I was gonna say,
staff.
you got what, I suspect you have one more from the way you said it.
I have one more from staff and then I have two from Gail, which are relatively minor. So there is a comment under, I think we're at page 33, under maintaining an accessory dwelling unit. There is a provision that says, so that a list of available ADUs can be properly maintained by the town. Upon rental of any ADU, the owner shall inform the zoning official of said occupancy. That was also flagged by staff. I think it was, Allison, I think it was Jen who had some concerns by that. And the concern, I think, was just the volume of, information that would be coming in to staff and, how to navigate that extra workload. Did I miss anything on that, Allison?
Maintaining a list of available units, is that how it's worded?
So that a list of available ADUs can be maintained, upon a rental of any ADU, the owner shall inform the zoning official of said occupancy. So you'd be receiving, the town would be receiving information every time there was a rental of an ADU, and there would be a list that was kept and maintained.
I mean, my question would be, right now the town maintains a list of ADUs, right? And but not availability wise, I'm not, I don't know, it sounds like you're becoming a realtor. I don't know,
Yeah, I was just. gonna
that's
say,
my
that's a
concern, like
realtor's
the
job.
town tracks. They maintain a list, we have a list of all units, but if somebody, well, I guess that's part of the ordinance too, if it's no longer being utilized, the town is supposed to know that.
I have to say, this isn't a hill
Yeah.
I would die on, you know.
It's
So
a hill-
Allison, if the town is already maintaining a list, why don't we just say that? The list,
Yeah.
Well,
this shall
I have
be
quick,
maintained.
sorry, quick question. It's Amanda speaking. When you say ADUs, are you talking about 513s? Or
yes,
just-
yes.
I was, that, they do keep that running list. It's a lot
Yes.
of,
Yeah.
There's
thank you.
about 50, right, 50 accessory dwelling units, there's a list, and their status is that was recently checked,
Yes.
by the building department, zoning department, so, I guess I'm not clear that language exactly what's intended there,
Well, I mean, I can tell you what was intended, and that I assume is pretty obvious, which is you would like to, in theory, have a central hub that a person who's looking for housing could go to say, I wonder whether there are any available 513s. That's the intent.
okay, so that's right, yeah, like a real estate type of becoming,
You can call it what you want to call it, Allison, but you know what
No.
the intent is. I mean,
Yeah.
to help provide.
the
connect-
intent is not very difficult to divine there, with due respect. We're trying to have a system where someone can come into town hall, look in a file and see whether there are any available accessory dwelling units. Now, if that creates an expensive burden, I understand. As I say, it's not a hill I want to die on, but that's what the intent was.
I wasn't clear, yeah, the intent, because it could also be like enforcement related to zoning, like, so if it's vacated, like that, there's a process there, if it's,
Yeah, that's what I.
so I wasn't
Mhm.
clear.
Well, I think the
I
enforcement
wasn't.
is going to be an essential part of this. And, I think there's, a parallel ordinance that we may do that provides some money to do that.
Mhm.
But that's,
Yeah. I think I mean, I think the town could, yeah, I don't have a strong feeling on this either, but if the town wants that in practice, like, that can be achieved without it being in the zoning regulations, right? I mean, it could be just an administrative
Right.
yep,
like, it could be, this is our by practice, like, this is
absolutely.
a task, this is part of your requirements, your job, right? So I don't know if it necessarily needs to go in there. in the zoning regs, and it could be just something that the town council says this needs to happen.
Right. Makes
Okay.
sense.
Administratively, I like that.
Mhm.
So do we want to remove it?
I think that's kind of what I'm hearing.
Yeah,
Yes.
move it.
Okay. All right, so I think that's it for flagged by staff. Allison, did I miss anything that you know of?
Of outstanding issues?
Or
No.
staff?
Yeah.
Okay. So Gail had 2 comments. And again, these are Gail comments, not my own. One was on the definition of accessory structure. The latest round of changes did include the deletion of the last sentence in the definition. That sentence read, "No accessory structure shall be used for overnight human habitation unless it is an accessory residential structure in compliance with section 511, or it satisfies the definition of dwelling unit in this section." When I spoke to Gail, her reasoning was that she really felt that putting that language in the definition or leaving it in the definition was important to provide additional clarity to those members of the public who might pick up the ordinance and want to know what an accessory structure is defined as.
Okay.
I don't see that that's a problem.
I think my own opinion is that Gail spent a lot of time fly specking this thing and figuring it out. And if she thought that sentence was important, it's important to me. How's that for a detailed analysis? You know, sometimes you just have to.
I did not know Gail had talked to people. That's fine. I was afraid to go through with this without Gail having being here.
We don't realtor eyes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. Okay, what's her other third thought?
So just so I'm clear on that one, we're gonna go with Gail's recommendation and
Yes.
keep the language.
Yes.
And the last one is. We're back to the section we just talked about, under where we just discussed about, maintaining a list. So again, back under maintaining an accessory dwelling unit. There was language. Forgive me. Okay, so there's language that says that all ADUs have to be rented only by written rental agreement. Fine. Which shall be kept by the owner. Also fine. And made available to the zoning official upon request. That language to Gail, was of concern. She recognized that there might be an opportunity for there to be unfair or incomplete requests if we keep the language and made available to the zoning official upon request. Thinking behind that is you have a town official requesting a copy from some and not others. And why did they request it from my neighbor? Why didn't they request it from my neighbor? So the idea was that just to remove that altogether and just leave in the language in subsection, I think it was 3, it's now 2, that all contracts for rental must be filed with the zoning official.
Yeah, that was what we talked about originally, several months back.
Not that much space in the file cabinet.
I don't care one way or the other. It's not my prerogative. You tell me what you guys want. What we did talk about is because that there would be a contract, but I don't care.
I don't think there's anything in there about requirements for the contract or that staff is going to have to approve contracts or enforce contracts. It's just a central repository. Do I understand that correctly, guys?
Yes.
Yeah, as Allison said.
Yeah, it's what, yeah.
Mhm, right. It's just.
You're right. Yeah, yeah.
So you think you want to remove it? Is that what I'm hearing?
Or does it get moved to administrative and you get a little bit more work,
Yeah.
but not much?
I think it's just a filing requirement under the language. Is that, am I correct about that? Cause my head is plenty open for being wrong about this.
So the language is that it would be filed upon request. So
I
do
thought the
you-
lease had to be submitted, no?
That's
not
what I
everybody?
thought
Yeah.
too.
It
Yeah.
has to be submitted. Think
So
about the
what-
reversal.
Yeah.
Think about having
Yeah.
a bad renter that needs to be removed from the premises. And
That's
the
a good
renter
point. Sorry.
says, I didn't sign a contract.
But how do you, sorry, someone's still.
Yeah, I think. Jen-
Sorry, I was just saying, I remember Jen and Karen calling people for information because they didn't have it. So I feel like they have to file.
So there seems like consensus to have it
Yeah,
filed,
should
Yeah,
file.
okay.
not just upon request.
For their own protection.
Yeah.
if
How do
nothing
you
else.
know, how do you know it's a year-round rental? I mean, I guess they signed the affidavit, but yeah, you need to know that it's being utilized
Yeah.
correctly. It's a year-round
Well,
rental,
that's,
or in the
uh,
case of, commercial, it's the.
100%, Allison. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's part of the belt and suspenders here.
Yeah, I would say that had to be required.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
basic.
And I just noticed one more under the same section, which talks about under maintaining an accessory ADU. I have a question here. There's a provision that once the individuals identified in the agreement no longer reside in the premises, or the title is transferred, the property owner shall notify the zoning official in writing, and the ADU shall be considered abandoned. I'm assuming you want to exempt town employee ADUs from that?
Yes?
Because the town would be informing itself.
yes.
Yeah, and if you don't inform, you would.
Well,
you would
given some of the
abandon it.
communications issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we probably wouldn't want to, yeah, that makes sense, I guess.
Okay,
I think that's all I have. Let me just do a 10-second search.
No moss.
Any other questions from the board before?
I was gonna say we have to press the board before, I assume we need to vote on this so we can forward it.
I'd like to just vote on it.
Okay. There are no further questions. I will make a motion that the amendments to several sections of the zoning ordinance, and I'll let you fill it in. I'm not going to read them all
Yeah.
over again. To eliminate material related to accessory dwelling units. So, excuse me. So the additions and corrections. And do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any further questions? Last chance at the apple. Bite at the apple. Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone
And so-
opposed?
So more off the record, I think at some point you may want to look at the language in terms of subjectivity again.
Yes.
Now that these.
Yes.
because there's quite a bit of
Fortunately-
Subjectivity in here.
Fortunately for us, but probably
Oh,
not for
she does.
Karen. She was working on that in parallel. I think she was, you know, she was working on both of them, so.
Been
But
quite a
thank
day.
you. I think this is
Thank you for
really
your
worth
patience and
doing.
staying.
Thank you,
And
thank you.
because without you here, I would have rolled it over to next month because I would not have known that Gail had sent stuff in.
Thank you.
And I'm grateful that you're as such a strong promoter of this.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
I think it's,
But I'm grateful.
well, that's,
Yeah.
it was nice that the committee met and did a lot of the preliminary work because we
Yeah.
never would have gotten through it in a committee like this. It just isn't that kind of. Well, I think she's wonderful, as you well know.
Thanks for having.
Good night. Thank you. We have two things left. We do not have any minutes, so that will be rolled over till next time. And the other thing is regarding the second story decks.
Mhm.
So we could either start on that, but it is 10 of 7, or we could roll it over until next month when Allison could be here, when we can talk more about the pictures.
Definitely.
You'd like to roll it over until next month? Looking at everybody, I'd say our patience is running out. I will make a,
You know, we really should celebrate. If I wasn't if my brain wasn't so dead, we really.
we got a lot
This
done
is-
today, a
we should
lot done.
celebrate this accessory dwelling.
Yes.
It is. We got that done and we got the stuff done from the state starting. We've got a lot going. Anyway, I will make a motion to roll over numbers 5 and 6 until next month. Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion to adjourn. So move. We don't have any, so we'll do that next month. Jen didn't finish, I don't think, because she's sick. All right, thank you guys very
Okay.
much for
Good night,
hanging in there.
everyone. Thank
Thank you,
you.
guys.
Yeah. Talk to you
Great.
soon. Bye.
Bye now. See you next month.